Destination Nightmare, the B-Movie Podcast.
I'm not going back there. Look, Beth, the only way we can get this thing over with is to burn the body.
Now, for those who have seen The Exorcist, Carrie, and Ruby, here is new unspeakable horror in Nurse Sherri. From a doomed medical operation to the return of an evil human soul driven to evil in a strange and gruesome story from the other side of life.
You know absolutely nothing about what you're dealing with.
Don't be afraid. Take my hand. Come with me, Sherri, and I'll introduce you to the bliss that lies beyond the borders of hell.
Living, breathing terror chills your flowing blood and shocks your nervous system cold in Nurse Sherri. It's the year's most frightening journey into the hidden world of the supernatural. And it soon becomes a nightmare of living hell and torment.
Gotcha.
If we were in the 17th century, I'd be inclined to diagnose her symptoms as a classical case of possession.
Don't touch me!
Stay where you are. Don't interfere with things you know nothing about. Your powers are finite. Mine are limitless.
Meet Nurse Sherri and travel into the hidden corridors of a twisted mind through the very core of her tormented soul. It's more bizarre, more terrifying than your most frightening fears. Nurse Sherri. Don't miss Nurse Sherri for an evening of pleasure and terror. Nurse Sherri in color, rated R for adults. Under 17, not admitted without parent. From Independent International.
It's time to talk about Nurse Sherri.
Now,
also known as Black Voodoo, or...
I had seen this earlier.
You'd seen this movie?
Like the PG version.
You saw the, what was it called, Black Voodoo or something? Or
Yeah, I was flipping around the dial, and I think I came in on the scene where that cartoon green blob...
Yeah.
...the bedroom and takes possession of her. And it had to be on, like, USA or one of those other TV things. You know?
Long time ago.
Yeah, it was probably in the 80s, maybe.
Yeah, you saw the PG version, basically.
Yeah, but I gotta tell you, man, I don't know where this hospital is, but I want to go.
That was a horny hospital.
Yes. Not every guy was good looking, man.
No, but they got, you know, they got care, tender loving care. Now this movie, there's like a, God, it's one of these Al Adamson, Sam Sherman movies. I bought a videotape, or my friend did. I recorded it years ago, and it was the movie Black Voodoo. So I recorded, I never even watched it. So, like, I don't know, 10 years ago, I go, oh, what's this? I put it on, and then it's like, I'm looking at it, and I goes, wait a minute, this doesn't sound like a blaxploitation.
Yeah.
It's a horror movie, and it was the PG, I think it was the PG version. So, or the soft version. And I'm like, I kind of liked it, you know, okay, that's cool, you know, whatever, you know. And then, like, years later, I found a DVD, and a DVD they put out, and it was the movie was called they called it The Possession of Nurse Sherri. Yeah. And it goes, with added scenes and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. And then it's like, this movie wants to be a horror movie, a nurses movie, a blaxploitation movie, a sexploitation movie. It wants to be everything, you know. So I think the version that was in theaters wasn't the PG version. It might have had a little bit of the nudity, but it probably didn't have those like, remember when they're both in bed and then they go, hey, what was the craziest thing that happened to you? And he gets like, service on the podium, and then, well, how about you, honey? Oh, well, I had a lesbian thing going on back then or whatever. So I'm like, okay. I see why they cut this out of the movie, because it made no sense. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think the R-rated movie probably had some nudity in it. Maybe not. There's a version of it that I have, which is in storage. I ended up going on Amazon and finding another version of it with another movie. And I said, let me get this, because I want to watch, because I'm thinking that there's a more explicit even version. Even though this was pretty graphic in some ways, there's a more explicit version. So that'll be in next week or whatever. But I seem to think there's even a sleazier version of this. It's more like, you see more of Nurse Sherri. Let's put it that way.
Oh, okay.
She was hot. Jill Jacobson. Yeah, she was pretty hot.
Was she in anything else?
She was in TV. She did television, like guest appearances. I think she was in some Star Trek, and I think she might have been in some soaps or whatever. Now the black lady, Marilyn Joi, she was in a ton of exploitation. She's like a queen of all those movies, like Mean Mother and Black Samurai and stuff like that. She did a ton of them, but those two, I think that the main guy, the main doctor, Geoffrey Land, the boyfriend, he did a couple more Al Adamson movies, I think. What I read which was interesting, which I didn't know, was that this movie has something to do with something that happened in California, where it was like some girl was refused a hospital care by some fanatic. She wasn't allowed to get hospital care by her fanatical family, and I think they were part of a cult. And then she died, and then apparently the cult leader tried to revive her in the desert. So there is some kind of a weird, realistic, where they got the idea from this or something like that, which I didn't know that. I just read it in Wikipedia, but yeah, there is some kind of a, but yeah, this is a movie that's kind of like, I guess both of these guys want to exploit it, so they would call it, you called it Black Voodoo, okay, but that's a blaxploitation title. Yeah. Nurse Sherri's a pretty ambiguous title, the possession of Nurse Sherri means probably a better title.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you remember this, and they didn't talk about this on Wikipedia. There was a movie that I saw a long time ago called The Entity, and I think this was kind of a rip-off of it. I think it had Susan Strasberg in it, and she was possessed by some spirit or whatever that entered her. Yeah. It was from the 80s. No, it was from the 70s. It was this movie 77. But I think it was called The Entity, and that's what I remember being like or whatever, like The Entity, but a lot sleazier and a lot more, there wasn't much gore in it,
Well, the gore back then, which was just somebody covered in blood and.
Yeah, she put a pitchfork in the guy or whatever, so. Yeah. That was about as gory as it got, but like the scene with her and her boyfriend there, Nurse Sherri and her boyfriend. Now that was pretty interesting. The way the angles they used to film that. And I seem to remember in the R-rated version, the angles were cropped a little bit, so you didn't see as much. That's what I remember anyway. So but yeah, I always liked this movie. I always liked all that Al Adamson's movies. So
yeah, it was surprisingly good.
it was a B movie. It was cheap, and it had its moments of silliness, but it was surprisingly interesting in some spots. Or whatever.
Tightened it up a bit and went a bit more mainstream. It would have been a really good horror movie, and then you could have called it like The Possession of
Nurse Sherri.
And then it could have been a really good movie of the week. Kind of
yeah, it did look like a movie of the week.
They're all B movies too,
They were B movies, that. And I didn't notice it at the time, but now when I look at them again, they were B movies. Except they couldn't go as far as they But you know, back then, you know, you had a couple of them which were like that Linda Blair one where she gets raped with a broom, you know, Born Innocent. And there was another one with one of the girls from a Brady Bunch called like Sarah, the Portrait of a Runaway or whatever, and that dealt with, you know.
Oh, yeah. It was Marsha, not Marsha, Jan.
Eve Plum. It was the other one. What's her name? Well, not Marsha, but I forgot what her name was in the show.
Jan Brady.
Jan Brady, yeah, Gerald Jan Brady, who was on an episode of on YouTube. They have episodes of Celebrity Bowling, and I actually watched that because I'm crazy. And Jan Brady and the Brady Bunch kids were there bowling. I was like, oh, that's really cool, you know. Yeah, I'm crazy. I watch Celebrity Bowling. What can I tell you? William Shatner versus, you know, John Saxon bowling. I mean, come on, you know. Can't beat that, you know what I mean? You can't beat that, you know. Well, let's take a break, mainly because I got my notes over there, so just give me a minute to go get them because I forgot to bring them over. I'll be right back. All right, let me get all this stuff out, and then we're back. Let's see here. Well, by notes, I mean just like scenes or whatever, you know. Okay, so yeah, so I guess this was something happened to some. Let me see if I can find it here. I'll tell you exactly. Let's see if I can get to it here. Yeah, I can. This is from Wikipedia, so I'll just read it or whatever. Okay. Nurse Sherri is a 1977 American supernatural horror film directed by Al Adamson and starring Jill Jacobson, Geoffrey Land, and Marilyn Joi. The film's plot follows a nurse who becomes possessed by the spirit of a vengeful cult leader who died in the hospital where she works. What was the name? Reanhauer or whatever the hell the name is. Reinhauer, the name of the cult leader, appears to have been derived from Margaret L. Reinauer, who presided over the real-life cult, the Circle of Friends. The incident taking place early in the film, during which Reinauer and his followers seek to resurrect one of their dead brethren via chanting, may refer to the attempted resurrection of 17-year-old Katherine Globe, who died after she was refused medical attention by religious zealots at St. Matthias, Bellwoods in Toronto in '67. The film is also known under such titles as The Possession of Nurse Sherri, Black Voodoo, as well as Beyond the Living, Hospital of Terror, Killer's Curse, and Hands of Death. So there you go. There you go. Those are all the titles. I have it as Black Voodoo, Nurse Sherri, and The Possession of Nurse Sherri. So The Possession of Nurse Sherri is probably the most sexy version of it or whatever.
It's the most descriptive, and it would probably be the most sellable one. Like if you're going to try to sell this.
I would think so, because you're selling it as a horror movie, maybe, you know. But, you know, the whole nurses thing, I didn't really dawn on me, but I watched some guy on YouTube and he goes, yeah, it's nurse-ploitation too. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. It is nurse-ploitation too.
Yeah. Cause back then nurses knew about
those movies were popular back then. Yeah.
Nurses and stewardesses.
Yes.
Were considered, sex pots and, you know,
exactly. Yeah.
And stuff. If you wanted to get lucky, an easy person to date would be a nurse or a stewardess.
Or a nurse stewardess would be like, you know, the best, you know. Yeah, that's right. And they were making movies about them like in the 70s or whatever, you know what I mean? So, okay, let's see here. Well, the first scene is what? The first scene is they're having they're trying to revive a
dead guy.
Somebody in the desert, the cult leader.
Yeah.
You know, that crappy guy or whatever. He's trying to like, you know, bring him back from the dead or whatever, you know, and that, did the guy die from not taking insulin or something like that?
He said he didn't it's like you were the one who convinced him he didn't need insulin to survive, and he died from it, and then they're trying to resurrect him.
Yeah.
He actually seems to start doing it, because at one point, just as the people are standing around saying, "Rise, William, rise, rise," and he's like shouting and screaming, and then you see like the corpse moves and like a hand shakes, and then I guess the cult leader has a heart attack or something, and
right,
and then you see him that they take him to the hospital, you know, in a very long ambulance scene.
Yeah, I remember that.
And
then they try to revive him in the hospital, right? They're doing a CPR on him and everything, but was it that he didn't want it done to him, or was it like
in later
flashbacks
scenes that he didn't want it done because he was in league with Satan and Satan would cure him, and if they tried to revive him with their medicine, he would interrupt the process or something.
So meanwhile, while they're trying to revive him and he's dying, you see Sherri there. She's in the room, and all of a sudden she gets this funny look on her face, like, something's going on or whatever, So then, looks like the spirit was going in, went in her or whatever, for whatever. She was a chosen one or something. I don't know. There was no connection between the two, right? I mean,
find out in the flashback that while the guy was a patient,
that's right. She knew him. Yeah.
Yeah, she would talk to him. And he kept telling her, "You have a special gift. If you only, let me help you, whatever." And she's like, "Oh, what was it?
Shaw,
Rawstown, or whatever, Robespierre,
Reinhauer, or whatever." So
but yeah, and there's that one scene, like she's getting all weird and wonky, and then you see like this bloody hand come towards her, and it was the doctor who...
Her boyfriend.
And I'm watching and going, why is he reaching for her with a bloody... Because he had just come out of the operating room. And she's like, oh, don't touch me. Go smell like formaldehyde and just go take a shower and stuff.
Yeah, that's her boyfriend there, Geoffrey Land or whatever, So then, I think after that it cuts to them in at the house, and then they're in bed and they're all getting... That's when they get all sexy and it gets all graphic a little bit. And then after they're done with,
people knew brown chicken, brown cow. They're all, rolling around and.
Oh yeah.
It was kind of graphic. Perfect.
Kinda.
Perfect movie if you're like a teenager.
Yeah, except I don't know if that version was in the theaters. I think that was footage that was cut out, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Wanted like an R rating. It's a little more than an R rating. Back then, it would have got a more.
It might have gotten it might have slipped by or whatever. Because what these guys would do sometimes, like especially the B movie guys, like they would take a movie that might have been a little graphic, maybe, and they wanted it to get. This was in the earlier '70s, and getting into a mainstream audience, and they would cut it so it looked like it wasn't that bad, and submit that print to the censors, and then they would go, oh, it's a GP. Oh, okay, thank you. So they put GP on the poster, and then they put the crap back in it. And I can tell you one movie they did that with was Beast of Blood. They did that.
Oh, wow.
I can't prove it, but there's no way that movie, Beast of Blood, would have been a PG or GP movie, because it's got nudity, it's got violence, it's got all sorts of crap in it that would not be a PG, but I believe that they took scenes out and they gave them a TV print or something, and they went, oh yeah, that's a PG, that's okay, whatever. So
after that wild love scene, then they're laying in bed, and he asks her,
what's the craziest thing?
Yeah, what's your craziest sex you ever had? And how he's giving a lecture, and then podium in front of students, and there's a girl hiding in the podium, and she, unzips his fly and, does her magic with him. And he's there trying to lecture, and he's giving a bad performance of what it's like.
And the people in the audience are all laughing and stuff.
And then, he finishes his lecture, and he goes to leave, and then you see the girl reaches up, pulls him back towards the podium to zip his pants up, and then he leaves again. It's like, oh, God. It's like, what is that about?
And then he goes to her, well, okay, well, that's your turn. What's the craziest thing you ever did? And she had some kind of a lesbian thing at the pool or something like that.
And I always marvel at these movies because I'm not a girl or a woman. I don't know what they're like when they're alone, but I don't think women run around topless with each other.
No. No.
So anyway,
they do go to the bathroom with each other, which is weird.
Yeah, but not in the same stall.
No.
Anyway, her friend comes out, and her friend's topless, and Sherry's laying on a beach chair, and then the girl starts massaging her, and then takes her bikini top off, and then starts massaging her front, and then starts kissing her, and starts getting closer and closer to her nethers. And then you see Nurse Sherry having a sort of face.
She's enjoying it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And then it goes. It's back to them. So then he's getting dressed. Was there a scene between that and?
Yes, after that scene when they're like done, you meet the football player in the hospital, the blind football player.
Yeah. So the black nurse,
Marilyn Joi was the actress.
She's all excited because there's a black
star football player,
player. So she goes in to talk to him. He's got his face hidden, and she's all gushing all over him. And then he sort of snaps at her and starts yelling at her because he was in a car accident and he was blinded. So she gets all like pissed at him and then leaves. And then you're back at Nurse Sherry's place.
And she's up laying in bed.
She's in bed. And she's laying there, and then she starts to feel weird, and then you hear this weird music. And then they keep showing you the light under a doorway. And then suddenly you see like this really bad cartoony effect of white sparkly lights and this green weird blobby thing, and it comes towards the camera and it climbs on the bed and it's glowing at her, and she gets possessed by the spirit. She gets possessed by something. You don't know what.
Yeah.
And
but somehow or another, this thing, like when she's laying in bed. I mean, I don't remember if this was in this version, but I remember watching a version where she's laying in bed and she's got her robe. All of a sudden, the robe starts opening up.
Well, that part wasn't in this version.
That's in another version of it.
Okay.
Where the robe starts opening up, and it doesn't show it to you, but you got to get the impression that it's going through there. You know what I mean? Downstairs, so.
Yeah.
Whatever. So she gets invaded by the evil spirit or whatever, but really, nothing happens yet, she's just going.
She's just sort of fine. Okay.
And then you get another scene where the football player, the nurse either comes back or she's talking to him and he apologizes for being nasty to her or whatever, and then it was like, he's like, okay, they're good or whatever. And then it seems like after that, there's a scene where there's the third nurse, and she goes into some goofball's room, and he's like, and she's just like, he says, oh yeah, I have to take care of some business for you. And she's just getting naked, and like the guy's like, huh?
At first, there was also, when she put the thermometer in his mouth, there's one scene, like close-up of him, and he's holding the thermometer, and it's backwards, this little silver part.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then, like this guy's not good looking at all. He's real hairy and sweaty and stuff. And she's, trying to make him feel good and getting, talking all sexy and stuff.
Takes her top off and stuff,
And then they start having sex. It's like, what?
Obviously, I think this was added. I don't know. Well, maybe not. I don't know. I don't know which version of it is a theatrical one. Whenever I get that DVD, maybe it'll say theatrical version of it. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, so that sets up, that whole situation or whatever, and then it cuts to, whatchamacallit, Sherry's like in the car and you hear some weird music.
Yeah.
And she drives to a graveyard or whatever,
Yeah.
And then I guess it's the grave of that guy, Reinauer or whatever,
Although
they don't tell you though, but you assume,
Yeah. Grave, and it's like, all right, who's this? And then
she goes in. Sherry also comes. That's where she comes back, and she goes to the football player's room, and she sees that ring or that pendant that he has.
It's a bracelet with the two.
It's a bracelet, and she's like put off by it or something like that. So you're like, okay, whatever, So.
Yeah. And then Well, what else?
Is the next one when she's back in the car again and she's going to the old man's house? I think.
Yeah, it goes to
the farm or whatever.
Oh, and the doctor. He was
one of the other doctors that was doing the operation on.
Yeah, he was one of
the cult leader or whatever.
So yeah, she's smiling.
But do you know that at that point in the movie or not? You don't know this.
You don't really, yeah, because they didn't really explain the setup until like after she starts acting weird and kills the doctor and stuff. So he's on his farm and she kills him with a pitchfork.
Yeah, it's like, what the hell is this?
And then there's once the scene where the black nurse with Marilyn Joi goes into the football player and she has sex with him. She like drops.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then I think he gives her the bracelet with the two heads up.
Right.
Oh, my grandmother, who was into voodoo.
The Haitian grandmother, yeah.
She said this would always bring me luck and protect me. Here, you have it.
Yeah, exactly. And then Sherri shows up at the hospital with like bloody face and hands or whatever, and like with this like wasted look on her face, and like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
You know. And then is after that? Is it the doctor comes home to Sherri? Is that when she starts speaking in the guy's voice, or is that later on in the movie?
Yeah, he's worried about her. She's acting weird. He hasn't seen her. She missed lunch. That was it. She missed lunch because the doctor was going to take all the women to lunch. And she's acting weird. And then he confronts her and he's talking to her, and that's when the guy's voice comes out of her.
Yeah.
And they give you a lot of plot points. I told you not to operate on me, and blah blah, all this and that, and you're gonna regret.
See, now you're trying to figure out what's going on. Kind of little by little, you start figuring it out or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the doctor goes to a psychiatrist and talks about what's wrong with Sherri. She's acting weird or whatever, So, the doctor's like telling her, well, maybe she's having some, I don't know, whatever, some mental issues from from past problems or whatever. I don't know. So then it cuts to the mystic, a flashback of the mystic in the hospital, and then you see the old doctor that she killed. She's trying to they're trying to revive him and CPR him, and you see everybody there, and then he just dies or whatever. You know what I mean?
So that's when you find out.
Yeah, and after the way I wrote it was after that scene is when the bracelet is given, according to what I wrote down here. So anyway, we already know that the football player gave Marilyn Joi
the bracelet.
Yeah.
But then doesn't Sherri then go try to kill the football player?
That's when the bracelet stops her, I think. Remember, like he still had the bracelet when she tried to go in and kill him. For what I don't remember what reason she did. She had to kill him, but she went in to get him, and he had the bracelet stopped her.
I think because there was a couple of scenes where he was like when Nurse Sherri was killing the doctor. He's like rolling around, like, what's wrong? He says something bad's happening, something. So it's almost like he has some kind of special power, and he can detect.
I get it. He can detect the devil or evil or whatever.
Yeah, so I think she's trying to get rid of him, but that bracelet stopped her.
So then the doctor comes back home, and then in the meantime, there's a flashback to the mystic telling that scene where the mystic. You see the scene between Sherri and the mystic when he was in the hospital, the cult leader. And that's when you were talking about that he tells her that she's the chosen one and she's special and blah, 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 or whatever, so. And then after that, Sherri gets in the car again. She goes back to the hospital and she kills another doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who, I don't even know if he was there or not, but yeah, gets in the car and stabs this guy.
Yeah.
He dies. And then
she goes to kill that's when she goes back to kill, after that she goes to kill the football player, but Marilyn Joi stops her.
Yeah, and because Marilyn Joi has the bracelet, she
couldn't do it, yeah. And then her boyfriend comes in too, and that's when, after that is when the football player tells Marilyn Joi about, they have to cremate the body of the guy.
Right.
Because they're already figuring out that Sherry's like possessed or something. And they got to cremate the body of the guy in order to get rid of the possession or whatever. But apparently, like we were talking about before, his grave doesn't have a name or something like that.
So then there's a scene, Marilyn Joi and the other nurse, they're driving to,
driving to the graveyard, right? Yeah.
They go with shovels and they're going to dig up the body. And so there's a couple of funny scenes where the one nurse is scared, she drops the shovel and she runs and all this stuff. Meanwhile, while this is going on, the doctor boyfriend goes to the house and he's looking for Sherry.
Yep.
And it cuts back to the women. They find the grave and they start digging it up. And you see the doctor looking around. He finds a fourth nurse who was...
Yeah, that's right. I didn't know who she was, but she must have been in the hospital.
She was in the background. She was in one scene really quick. I think the other nurse who had the sex with the ugly guy, I think she said, "Can you get Dr. So-and-so?" And she goes, "Okay," and then leaves. So anyway, the doctor boyfriend finds her dead with her throat slit.
Yeah.
So then he's looking around and he thinks Sherry might be in the closet. And so he opens it up and there's nothing in there. And then, the two nurses, they digging up, they hit the coffin and they pry it open, and then you see like this.
The hand pops out.
And so they freak out. But they, open the coffin, and, then it goes back to the doctor boyfriend, and he goes in the bathroom looking around, there's blood everywhere. So he goes to open up the shower door, and nurse.
She's got two hatchets in her hand.
Meat
cleavers, yeah.
Yeah, and she's in a nightgown. She's all bloody, and she slashes him, and he's on the floor, like writhing around, and she's got the meat cleavers, and she's going to like cut him up. And the two nurses flashes back to, the scene changes to the two nurses. They pour gasoline on the guy, light the things on fire, and start to burn. And then as the thing burns, you see Nurse Sherry's arms drop, and she drops the meat cleavers and she swoons, and the doctor boyfriend gets up and holds her and stuff. And then it flashes to the doctor's off, somebody's off.
Yeah, it was a psychiatrist's office.
Okay, yeah. And so the football player is telling them about, like, they had to destroy the earthly remains. And he's saying, he goes, while Sherry was possessed, she wasn't acting under her own. It was somebody else controlling her. The doctor goes, "You mean when she was possessed, she wasn't in control of herself?" I mean, he just like repeated the lines, like
yeah.
So then the doctor boyfriend and the psychiatrist, they go out, they leave the office, and they're like, it's like, well, we have to figure out how to spin this so that Sherry doesn't get brought up on murder charges and stuff, and maybe we have to consider her insane. He says, but you heard about the possession, and as soon as they destroyed the body, her possession ended. We're men of science. We can't use those terms. So, the psychiatrist leaves, and then the doctor walks over to another door, and he looks in, and you see Sherry in a straitjacket on the floor with her head down. She slowly looks up, and you're not sure if she's crazy or not, or but it's like that's how it ends. You see her in the straitjacket, and
it looks like she's probably like mentally messed up or whatever, so.
Yeah, traumatized in some way.
Even if the football player said that she's going to be okay, it looks like she's not okay. So, that's the end of this crazy movie with different titles and different edits, and
Well, like
that's cool that you saw it. Man, you must have seen it in the 80s on USA Network.
It had to have been on. Was it US? It was at night in USA.
Yeah, it was USA used to play some of those movies.
Yeah, so Yeah, those early 70s, and you can tell they cut out parts because the thing would suddenly jump.
Yeah.
And sometimes, even though they would air it, the cuts they made just the movie didn't make any sense. So they were just like, just put it up to fill airtime. I think it was like 88 minutes or so.
Yeah. It was an hour and 24 minutes.
Yeah. But okay. So, but the uncut version was a lot shorter. I don't know.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I remember when I got cable in the 80s, USA was playing other things like this. Plus they had Commander USA who was playing all sorts of like goofy movies on Saturdays, you know. But I remember seeing it was titled as Vampire Men of the Lost Planet, but it's also known as it's another Al Adamson, Sam Sherman thing. I can't remember what the original title of it was because my memory is just like it was like ridiculous these days. It's I can't remember what the title of it, but it was also known as Vampire Men of the Lost Planet. And I'm going like, what's this? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's that movie or whatever. So that was a TV version of it to differentiate it from whatever theatrical one, but it was also like a 70s movie. So they must have had all of his movies or some of his movies. But I don't remember. That's interesting. And there's Sherri actually played on TV. That's kind of cool, actually. You know, it's surprising you can remember. I mean, it must have made an impression on you back in '80.
That one scene with the green blob coming in, I'm like, wow, really? Because even back then, that was a cheese. I'm like, wow, really? And then then she was on the bed, and you're like, okay, how much they're going to show us? And they didn't really show you anything.
Now you saw this one, and they showed a lot.
They showed a lot more.
And this was on YouTube. Some guy just put the it's pretty racy, you know. I think I've seen a version that shows more of Nurse Sherri, but this one was pretty racy for YouTube. But you couldn't find it as Nurse Sherri. You had to type in Nurse Sherri USA.
Yeah.
And then it would take you to it or whatever. So.
Yeah, there's a bunch of you have to sometimes be creative in your.
So anyway, I'm glad you picked this one because that's a favorite of mine. I hadn't seen it up until like maybe 7 or 8 years ago when I bought it, and I was like, this is kind of fun. You know, I like Al Adamson movies.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like
I said, if it was a little tighter and made a little more mainstream and a little more coherent, it could have been a perfect made-for-TV movie.
I think so.
You know.
I think so. It has that TV look to it or whatever. You know, maybe not as violent, obviously not as sexy. The nurses wouldn't have been a bunch of, you know, horny ladies and.
Right, you'd have maybe in the scene with the ugly guy, he'd be making passes at the nurse, and she.
Yeah, that's about it. No flashbacks to, to lesbian scenes or lectures to getting, whatever.
Yeah, right.
None of that would be in the USA version of it. It wasn't even in the theatrical version of it, from what I gather, I was like, somebody said, hey, remember that? Oh, yeah, let's put it in. I'll sell it,
Yeah, let's spice it up.
I hope that the one that I have is the Possession of Nurse Sherri. It's in storage. I'd like to find it, but the cover was like, it looked like I don't know if you remember, back in the early 2000s, they were putting out these I think they were direct to video, these kind of like sexy horror movies, like sexy mummy ladies, and it looked like kind of like a softcore. They weren't the DVD that I have the cover of it isn't marketed as a horror movie because it's got some hot woman in a nurse's outfit, and she looks kind of possessed. But it was like, is this a sex movie or what is this? It wasn't a movie poster. Let's put it that way.
It took. They would use models who weren't in the movie at all.
That's exactly it.
Sexy. So you think you're getting something nearly hardcore, but you watch it, it's like, oh, this is from the 70s. It's just like, this is.
How did you find this anyway? On YouTube, what'd you type in? Because I
typed in. What the hell did I type in? Nurse Sherri.
Oh, so you knew the title? Okay.
Yeah. Full movie. I had to type it. I typed in a couple of things because sometimes.
So you specifically had the idea you wanted to see this Nurse Sherri movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of times when you do that, you get trailers.
Trailers, yes.
Sometimes I put like a minus sign trailer, or sometimes if I use the date in parentheses, it'll come up. You got to be sort of like a detective almost, looking for something.
Yeah.
And then if that don't work, then you got to try The Possession of Nurse Sherri, or
Right.
alternate titles, because sometimes it may go up under that, and you won't come up on other searches. So you got to be creative sometimes.
No, but I mean, yeah, I get it. But what the original idea of the movie Nurse Sherri just popped into your head? Did you see a trailer?
I think I saw it on one of those Facebook groups you belong to.
Oh, I get it. Yeah, I get it.
Was it Channel Z?
No, you know what it was? No, I know exactly what it was. I forgot because I'm a senior citizen. I put up one of those newspaper ads.
Yes. The double feature. Was it Nurse?
It was Nurse Sherri and something else.
Yeah,
and you said, hey, let's do that one.
Yeah. I used to love seeing those. Because I tell you, man, a lot of times the posters are so much better than the movie, and you get all these you get your imagination going. And,
yeah.
In New York, in the newspaper, that you'd see advertisements for all the porn movie theaters, and some of those photos were like really racist. Ooh.
Yeah, that's how you got the idea from it. Just escaped me until now. As a matter of fact, today on Facebook, I put more.
Was it like the Island of Lost?
Yeah, I'm trying to find that movie.
Yeah.
And that other one, the other one with Barbie Benton, I go, what the hell movie is that?
Yeah, got the mind of she got the body of face and body of I don't know, a cute girl, but the mind of I forget the word they use.
Yeah. I gotta find. I know of a movie called Island of Lost Girls, but it's an old, like, not what that seems like movie, So I'm wondering if that's just they just put the ad in it to make it look a lot steamier than it really is,
Bunch of.
Because the Island of Lost Girls, I remember, was a black and white movie from the 60s.
Well, it might still be. It's like I said. They would put on, get models, strippers, and have them pose. And
I'm gonna look around. I want to investigate that. I just put it up because it was so goofy, Yeah, you know why I put it up? Because the Nurse Sherri one had, like, they put some movie in Nurse Sherri, and then they took some, like, clip art of some nurse.
Right.
From, like, some kind of, like, old clip art, and they're just like, oh, that's Nurse Sherri. Oh, that really looks exciting there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what it was. It was so kind of like plain that was like, oh, okay, whatever.
Yeah. Or
anyway,
when videos first started coming out, if a famous actor had a real minor part in it, like John Travolta would be like a waiter in a scene, it would be like, they had the name of the movie starring John Travolta, and then it's like he's only in one scene for like 3 seconds.
You want to hear a classic example of that? I'll tell you a classic example of that. Me and my friend, the one I was seeing this weekend, and we were hanging out in Orlando or whatever.
Yeah.
They used to have the midnight movies, and they were advertised sometimes on the radio stations, the rock stations. So it was like, I forgot what the name of the movie was. I think it was a biker movie, but they said, oh, this week, on Midnight Movie, we have whatever by Angels, Wild, Bimbos or whatever, with Linda Ronstadt as you've never seen her before. And we're like, Linda Ronstadt did a biker movie? We're like, oh, okay. It's a midnight movie. Get out of the house, go, have some fun and come back in the middle of the night. Okay. There's no Linda Ronstadt in that movie. It was total BS or whatever, the only movie that I can think of that it might have been was like Born Losers, because I know that's the first Billy Jack movie, and I seem to remember there was a woman in it with short hair that somebody might have thought, oh, she looks like Linda Ronstadt, but there's absolutely no biker or whatever movie that had Linda Ronstadt as you'd never seen her before. So we were suckered by that one. So those were the days.
Yeah, those were the days, man.
Yeah, there were other ones too, but I can't think of them right now. I seem to remember there was some with like other TV actresses where it was like, oh, this one,
Yeah.
This one has so and so in a scene, you know, when she was starting out, like somebody like Farrah Fawcett or something. I don't know. It was in a bit, like you said, was in a little quick scene or whatever, you know.
Yeah. You know, somebody's girlfriend who like shows up for 5 seconds and then you don't see her again for the rest of the movie. It's like, oh god.
And then they become famous, and then they drag out this old, you know,
crap.
old thing just to like, you know. I love all these actors that have made all these like B movies, and they go, "I thought nobody was going to see them," you know.
Yeah.
And I go, yeah.
Not
How many
anymore.
times I've heard that stupid story, you know? No, you did it because it was like you needed the bucks. Tell the truth. You did it because you needed a buck. You made it. You maybe you thought nobody was going to see it, but too bad.
Yeah.
You know, all those movies are floating around in dumpsters and whatever in California and labs. You know, so it's all, well, not all of it, but most of it's going to come back to embarrass you till the day you know, whatever. So anyway, that was Nurse Sherri, this week's movie. Al Adamson, Sam Sherman, at it again.
At it again.
They were the kings they were the, I wouldn't call them the king, well, I call them Emin Corman and all that. They were some of the kings of, the B movies, the drive-in movies or whatever, and of retitling movies. The other one was like, the other classic one was like, okay, apparently Al Adamson needed a Frankenstein movie, and he didn't have one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he had this movie called Mark of the Werewolf. It was the first Paul Naschy movie, something along those lines, Mark of the Werewolf or the Wolfman or whatever. Mm-hmm. So he goes, well, I got this movie, but it's got no Frankenstein in it. What am I going to do? Oh, I got an idea. Let's do an intro. Let's do a cartoon intro and say that the Frankenstein monster actually turned into a werewolf and it was called Wolfstein. There's no Frankenstein monster in this movie. But the beginning of it gives you like the beautiful intro. Wolfstein. Yes, that's right. Wolfstein. You'll see the trailer. You'll see the trailer on YouTube, you know what I mean? And that's how he sold the movie. And the movie's called Frankenstein's Bloody Terror. And it's a Wolfman movie, the first Paul Naschy movie. So there you go. These guys could get away with anything back then.
Yeah. Well,
you know another classic one. Some guy in Texas. You know, you ever heard the Blind Dead movie? There's those two, the zombie guys, the hooded zombie guys riding on horses or whatever. Anyway, yeah, there's some of those. Well, some guy in Texas made some kind of like mental connection. He goes, hey, you know, those guys those zombie guys in the hooded and the horses, they look like ape skeletons. Huh. Hey, I got an idea. Why don't we just call this movie Revenge from Planet Ape and say that these apes were actually the zombies of the apes on the Planet of the Apes, and they did it. They took a Blind Dead movie. They got a guy doing an intro over it, and they called it Return to Planet Ape or whatever. That's how great and bad it got back then. People are thinking, oh, we're going to go see a Planet of the Apes movie, and they're seeing a blind, which is a cool movie, but, you know, no.
Oh, my God.
I miss those days, man.
Yeah.
I miss those days. Those are great.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, God.
Anyway, we'll be back next week with another great movie of sorts, and Roddy, what should we do in the meantime?
In the meantime, watch more B-movies!